Yeah, hello everyone. Let's discuss the further part of chapter constructor and destructors. Let's discuss what are different types of constructors. There are three types of constructors. One is default constructor, second is parameterized constructor, third is copy constructor. Now what's this default constructor? Default constructor is where you are not going to pass any arguments in the constructor. Such constructor is called as default constructor, or it is also called as zero argument constructor. If you don't pass any arguments to the constructor, that becomes default constructor. Now how to write this in your program? This is a syntax for writing default constructor outside the class, because I'm using scope resolution operator. So this is name of a class, name of your constructor, open and close brace. For example, student, name of a class, student, name of your constructor, and opening and closing brace. Now if you see an example, I'll create a class cube. Cube is a constructor. I'll assign the value of side is equals to 10. Coming to your main program, I say cube C. Cube is class, C is an object. So I say C dot side. So what's the value of C dot side? It's nothing but 10. So this is default constructor because you are not going to pass any value inside the constructor. Let's see how to define a constructor inside the class. You create two header files. I'll create class X, two private variables. This is your constructor X, same name as that of a class. Initialize any two values. This is display function. Display the values of A and B. Set W, this is set width, where you are giving some space in between A and B, which is present in your header file iomanipulation.h. Coming to your main program, I have created two objects, object 1, object 2 of class X. I'm going to call object 1.display and object 2.display. So when you compile this program, you are going to create two objects. You call this object 1.display. So you come here, display the values of A and B. A and B are nothing but 10 and 20. So once again, you're calling object 2.display. Again, the same values will be displayed. So the output is 10 and 20. Now, if I want to create a constructor outside the class, so how am I going to do that? I create a class student, include three header files. I'll define a registration number as private member, character as name, it's an array. Done. This is your constructor student. Then display function. So your class ends here. Since you are taking student outside the class, so I'm going to use scope resolution operator. Then registration number, which is equals to 0. You give any random values. strcpy, this is string copy. What I'm doing here, I'm trying to copy this book inside name. So that's why strcpy. So when I use this strcpy, this function is present in string.h header file. Coming to your display function, since I'm using outside the class, I use scope resolution operator. I display values of registration number and name. Coming to your main program, I create student S1 as an object and display use of default constructor and call your display function. So when you call display function, you're going to go here, display values of registration number. What's your registration number? It's 0. Then display name, what is your name? You're copying here book into name, so your name becomes book. So this is your output. Now let's see what are disadvantages of default constructor. Now in default constructor, it's not possible for us to initialize different values for different objects. We cannot even overload these default constructors. But we can initialize different values in different objects. This can be done only in parameterized constructors. So let's try and understand what is parameterized constructors. Parameterized constructor, it's nothing but a special member function which takes one or more than one arguments. Such functions are called as parameterized constructors. Now in parameterized constructor, we can initialize different objects with different values, which was not possible in your default constructor. We can also overload parameterized constructors in our program, which was not possible in your default constructor. Let's check with a small program. I'm going to create a class cube. Cube is your parameterized constructor because I'm passing some value here. Initialize that value to side. Side is your data member of type integer. Your class gets over here. Your main program, cube C1. Cube C1. Pass the values of C1 as 10, 20, 30. I'm passing some arguments here because this is a parameterized constructor. So initially you call 10, goes here. Initialize the values of x to side as 10. Next time when you call, you are passing 20. Next time you are passing 30 and you are displaying the values. So when you display, you get the output as 10, 20 and 30. Now let's see how parameterized constructors are called or invoked in 3 different ways. Parameterized constructors are called in 3 different ways, that is explicit call, implicit call and using equal to operator. First, let's understand what's an explicit call. Explicit call is nothing but where I'm trying to pass some values to constructor externally. Such constructors are called as explicit call for parameterized constructor. Now how to write this in syntax? I write name of a class, object name, constructor name, pass some values as an argument. Let's say for example, I have test, object 1 is name of an object, test is name of your constructor and pass some values. Now what's implicit call? Implicit call is nothing but where you are passing initial values as an arguments to constructor as internally. How to write this? Name of a class, name of an object, passing 2 arguments. Let's say for example test is name of my class, object is name of my object, 10 and 200 are arguments. The third way of calling parameterized constructor is with using equals to operator. Now how do I do that? Using class name, that is test, object name, object 1, using equals to sign and argument. Now when are we going to use this equal to operator? Whenever I want to pass only one value to an object, in such cases we use equal to operator. Now let's take an example where I'm going to combine implicit and explicit call into one program. I've created a class test. These are my parameterized constructor. I'm passing 2 values x1, y1, store it in values of x and y. This is display function displaying whatever content is present in your x and y. Your class gets end here. Coming to your main program, I'm going to call object 1. Test is of class test. Now object 1 10, 20. This is called as an implicit call because we are passing 10 and 20 internally to this constructor. Now test object 2 is equals to test 100, 200. This portion is called as explicit call. It's because I'm passing 100 and 200 to constructor externally. So after that, I call object 1 dot display. You are displaying the values of x and y. You call object 2 dot display x and y. So initially you are passing 10 and 20. You are going to display the values of x and y as 10 and 20. Next, you're calling explicitly. It becomes 100, 200, and you display 100 and 200. Now, if I want to create a program separately, one for explicit call, one for implicit call, how to write that? Now this is a program where I've written for explicit call separately. This is a program where I've written for implicit call separately. If you execute both the programs, you're going to get the same output. Now let's check how this program is working. I've created constructor num passing two parameters p and q, assign it to a and b, display the values of a and b. Coming to your main program, as I said, you have to use this syntax for explicit call equals to num, that is constructor passing arguments. So you're passing two values 10 and 20, 40 and 50 for object 1 and object 2. Display the values of object 1, display the values of object 2. So this becomes your explicit call because you're passing arguments as externally for your constructor. Same thing if I'm going to do this for implicit call, same program, initialize the value, display the values, but here the only change is in calling the constructor. Here I'm calling object 1 10, 20, object 2 40, 50. Display the values using object 1 dot display, object 2 dot display. So you're calling here and displaying the values of a and b. So if you execute, you'll see that both the values are having 10 and 20, 40, 50 for both the programs. So this is how you write a program separately for implicit and explicit call. Now, how to write a program to initialize an object using equals to operator? I've created a class num, create a constructor, pass the values of m to a, write the display function to display the value of a. Your class gets end here. Now I use equal symbol, equal operator with some value. Now I cannot write 100, 200 because using equal to operator you can pass only one value at one time. So I say object 1 equal to 100, object 2 equal to 200. So display object 1 is equals to, call the function object 1 dot display, you're going to call this. So whatever the value is there inside a, you are going to display it. Similarly for object 2 dot display, if you execute, you get the values of 100 and 200. Now let's try understanding what you mean by copy constructor. When you want to initialize the values of one object to the value of another object, provided both the object should be of same class. The meaning here is, if you want to copy the content of one object to another object of same class, such contents when copied are called as copy constructor. Let's take an example. CopyCon is copy constructor. I'm passing two arguments x and y, store those values in a and b, display the values. copy con, create a class, an object 30, 40. Now I have created one more object as object 2, storing the values of object inside object 2. So what is the value of object? I am passing 30 and 40. The same values I am copying it in another object, object 2, which is of type copy con. It's nothing but copy constructor. So whatever value I passed here, the same value is copied here. So when you say object 2 dot display, you're calling this function display the values of A and B. So its output as 30 and 40. Now what is constructor overloading? Like we have seen function overloading, we also have constructor overloading. When two or more constructors having same name as that of class, such constructors are constructor overloading. If I want to write a program for constructor overloading, I'll write it for simple interest. So I create a default constructor SI with class SI, parameterize constructor SI, pass 3 values, x and y z are stored in PTR, principal, time, rate of interest. Compute the value of SI, I'll calculate it as PTR by 100. Close your class. Coming to your main program, SI is your class. Object I have created as sim1 and sim2. In sim2 I am passing 3 values, 10,000, 12.0, 12.0. Then you call sim2.compute.si. You are passing the values here. Now when you pass these values, it goes here, store the value of PTR, calculate. Now this is constructor overloading because you are creating constructor of same name but with different number of arguments. So this is your constructor overloading. You execute this program, you calculate the values of PTR, divide it by 100, display the values of SI. What are destructors? Like we have constructors, we also have destructors. It's a special member function which is used to delete memory created by the constructor. Now destructors are nothing but what? Whatever the memory allocated by constructor is been destroyed. Such constructors where you are trying to create different types of memories is been destroyed by destructor. Now syntax for this: class name, private and public, data members and member functions. Now class name and this name, this is called as constructor. It is matching with this. Now how to identify destructor? Destructor is always prefixed with symbol tilde. So compiler will identify saying that this is destructor and this is your constructor. Now both the constructor and destructors having same name as that of a class. Let's take an example. I'll take class counter, private members, public members. I'll create a constructor, counter equal to 0, initialize some values. Destructor using tilde symbol. So this is an example of destructors. We'll programming example of how do we write destructors. I'm going to create a class test. Test is a constructor of type class test. This is I'm displaying here inside constructor. Then destructor. Destructor is used tilde symbol, so I'll write it as inside destructor. This is inside constructor, this is inside destructor. So my class gets end here. Then coming to your main program, I'm going to create two objects of type test class. So T1 and T2. So what I'm going to do here, for T1 I'm allocating different memory, that is test. Then for T2 again you are calling this inside constructor. After that you are going to display thanks. Again if you come here, you are creating one more object for class test t3. So again you are going to call this inside constructor. Now when you execute this program, you can see that the moment you create an object, you are going to go inside this constructor and it's going to display inside constructor. Again you are going to create test t2, again you are going inside the constructor and you are going to display inside constructor. Next you are displaying thanks, so it will display here. So again that you are creating test t3 goes inside the constructor, again you are going to display inside constructor. Now when you call a constructor, it's always based on how you have created an object. Like for example here I have created t1, t2, then t3. But while destroying the objects, it destroys in reverse order. That is, first t3 object will be destroyed, then t2 object will be destroyed, then t1 object will be destroyed. So that's how once you call t3 goes inside, so you are inside a destructor. Then you are calling t2. t2 you have created an object, so it goes here, again inside destructor. So again last t1, again it goes inside the destructor and says inside destructor. So remember, while creating a constructor, first you create memory for t1, t2, t3, but for a destructor it's in reverse fashion. So first t3 will be destroyed, then t2, then t1. So this is an output for that. So let's make a note of destructor. If you look at the destructor, it's same name as that of a class. Compiler identifies destructor based on the tilde symbol. We do not return any value for destructors. Neither we pass any arguments to your destructors. Destructors also cannot be overloaded, and destructors should always be declared under public. So that was about constructors and destructors chapters. Thank you.